Saw dudes, this is Dante. Wait, that's the wrong one. This is Dante. Bro, who's putting these images up? Alright, now this is Dante. Jokes aside, he is an amazing Warframe and one that I feel has a perfect kit. DE hit it out of the park when creating his kit, and I feel that he can easily cover all difficulties of the game with ease. This video will explore a full loadout for Dante, making sure you understand everything you need to know. Now less yapping and more build crafting. Let's get started. To get Dante, you will need to farm the Disruption mission Armatus on Deimos. Accessing this node requires the completion of the Deadlock Protocol and Whispers in the Walls. All of his parts drop from Rotation C. If you're having some bad luck, all of his parts can be purchased using Vessel Capillaries from Lloyd. Vessel Capillaries drop from the Demolisher units in the Disruption mission. Because Dante is a new Warframe, I will have a brief ability overview. His passive causes enemy types with completed Codex entries to become permanently debuffed with Chronicler's Mark. This debuff grants Dante's equipped weapons, including the Noctua itself, and Final vs. Ward Warden Noctua copies, an extra 50% status chance against these enemies. Dante's first ability is Noctua, which opens his Exalted Tome. The primary fire deals only slash damage, which is great for stacking slash procs for damage over time. It has a 30% crit chance, a 2x crit multiplier, and a 25% status chance. Each time a primary fire shot hits a target, it splits into 4 fragments that seek enemies within 20 meters at a 60-degree angle. The alternate fire throws a wide wave of runes that deals impact and radiation damage and has infinite body punch through. It takes 45 seconds to fully charge without input, but the primary fire reduces the recharge time by 1 second on hit. Multi-shot counts as an additional hit, drastically reducing the charge time. Kills with Noctua passively scan enemies into the Codex, which plays into the Chronicler's Mark passive. Also, Noctua bypasses the Canticle and Invocation restriction, and can equip all the mods, though that would be somewhat wasteful. Light Verse is Dante's second ability, which grants a brief invulnerability period while casting. It grants a 20% max health bonus, and 500 overguard to himself and allies within 20 meters. Dante's third ability is Dark Verse, inflicting 2 instances of 1250 slash damage to enemies within 20 meters in a 50-degree cone. Enemies hit by this ability are staggered slightly, and each instance of damage has guaranteed slash status. Alright, now this is the long part. Dante's fourth ability is Final Verse, which essentially is a composition of 2 verses. The verses are taken from his second and third ability. Pressing 4 once 2 verses are completed will activate the corresponding ability. Activating 4 with 2 light verses grants 5000 overguard to Dante and allies nearby instantly, and a buff that grants 50 overguard per second on kills and assists. Using Final Verse with 2 Dark Verses inflicts 6500 slash damage to enemies in a large radius without a line of sight check. Any slash, heat, or toxin status damage over time is condensed into 1 damage instance and multiplied by 3 times, essentially acting as Expedite Suffering on steroids. Activation with the Light Verse, then a Dark Verse summons a baby Noctua companion for Dante and allies. The baby Noctua will attack targets that the player strikes, but only deals 30% of the real Noctua's damage. It will not use the alternate fire. Finally, we have a Dark Verse, then a Light Verse, which activates Page Flight. This summons 3 Peregrines that attract enemy aggro and attack enemies. They attack enemies dealing 300 slash damage with guaranteed status procs. Enemies that are hit by the Burbs receive 50% status chance vulnerability for 30 seconds, which is multiplicative to other status chance sources. Also, they are completely invulnerable, and will only go away upon the ability duration running out. Gameloop time. Dante's Gameloop is actually really simple. At the start of the mission, activate Triumph by using Final Verse with 2 Light Verses stored. Then summon your companions by using a Light Dark and Dark Light Final Verse. From then on, use double Dark Final Verses or Tragedy to DPS adds and nuke the maps. While casting spells, use Noctua to stack slash on enemies and clear fodder. Keep writing your enemies' names in the Death Note and you're set. Rinse and repeat. Today's video only has 1 build variant. There's a lot to cover with Dante, but since his base values are so good, there's not much you really need to do to him. All alterations of the build are Steel Path viable, so feel free to experiment. Thanks to the universal aura polarity, Dante can use any aura. We're going to use Growing Power to buff all of Dante's abilities. Brief Respite is not required since Dante can generate Overguard easily, which carries its own gate period. Additionally, Growing Power does get proc off of Noctua's status applications. In the Exilus slot, we have Power Drift, which just like Growing Power is used to increase our ability strength. If you're worried about stagger or knockdowns, you can try using Prime Sure-Footed. However, it is uncalled for given the long-range combat that Dante covers. Prime Continuity increases ability duration and lengthens the effect of Final Verse. This reduces the need to recast key abilities significantly, lowering our energy expenditure over time. Next, we have Prime Flow, a natural choice since Dante is a caster frame. With a maxed out copy, Dante has 769 total energy. This is perfect for allowing ability spam for higher levels. Transient Fortitude grants us more ability strength, but does bring down our ability duration slightly. However, this loss is mitigated by Prime Continuity, so we still have a long duration for our Final Verse. Streamline cuts down the cost of all of our abilities. This is especially important for Noctua, which consumes energy for each shot. Rolling Guard is used as a failsafe in case our overguard fails. Even though there's plenty of CC provided by our paragrams from Final Verse, AoE damage could still deplete shields completely at high levels. Stretch and Augur Reach are used to buff ability range, affecting all of our abilities. If you want to take advantage of more range, you can swap out Augur Reach for Overextended. The ability strength hit can be made back with Growing Power, Archon Shards, and Arcanes. Precision Intensify buffs all Final Verse abilities with a massive 90% ability strength buff. This will be essential to nuking and is especially valuable to Dante since he essentially has 4 ultimate abilities. Now let's cover the slight alteration to this build. For this, we will swap Growing Power for Energy Siphon and Stretch for Archon Stretch. This variation is meant to completely negate energy expenditure at the cost of some offensive power. This build is a bit overkill, but if you want to turn off your brain for a bit, this is the way to go. Keep in mind that Dante does not apply electricity status directly with abilities. However, we can proc Archon Stretch using a companion that has modded electricity damage, manifold bond, and a damaging ability, or with Noctua that has electricity modded onto it. Proccing the mod will grant 2 energy per second for 10 seconds, allowing for more ability spamming. Let's go over some of the Noctua builds you can expect to see. First, we have a baseline build. For all of the Noctua builds, we will have the same 6 mods. Galvanized Shot, Galvanized Diffusion, Prime Target Cracker, Prime Pistol Gambit, Lethal Torrent, and Zada Invocation. Galvanized Shot and Diffusion helps with scaling, allowing Noctua to apply more slash procs consistently. Prime Target Cracker and Pistol Gambit assist in crit scaling. Lethal Torrent bumps up fire rate in multi-shot, which helps reduce the alt fire cooldown significantly without the need for kills. Zata Invocation grants 1 energy per second for 20 seconds for each enemy hit, which can stack up to 10 times. This essentially mitigates the cost of Noctua's energy per shot, allowing for truly infinite spamming. For the first build, we have Karna's Stinger and Augur Seeker. Karna's Stinger buffs the slash damage of the primary fire and ups status chance. Augur Seeker increases status duration, which is factored into the tragedy equation for more nuke potential. The second build uses Jolt over Karna's Stinger, which grants electric damage. This allows primary fire and alternate fire hits from Noctua to proc Archon Stretch for super brain-dead use. Their energy regen works alongside Zata Invocation. The next variation uses Karna's Stinger and Vohm Invocation. Vohm Invocation increases ability strength by 4% for 20 seconds on all fire hits and stacks up to 15 times. Ability strength buffs all of Dante's abilities as well as Noctua's outgoing damage, so this is a nice combo if you want to have more nuke potential. Lastly, we have Jolt and Vohm Invocation. This setup is once again meant to be used with Archon Stretch and offers stupid energy regeneration and ability strength gains. This is an all-in-one setup and allows for brain-dead gameplay. Next up, we have the Helminth section. Admittedly, I don't think Dante needs nor wants a Helminth ability. His whole kit has great synergy, so it seems like a wasted investment. If you want to use a Helminth ability, you can subsume over its one, Noctua. The abilities I believe to be the most valuable for Dante are Ensnare, Nourish, and Roar. Ensnare is great for grouping and lends itself to Ad-Clear and Noctua's Fragment passive. Since it groups enemies and keeps them standing, headshots are possible and allow for better slash proc numbers. This can be exploited with Tragedy for group nuking. Be sure to use a slash melee weapon or gun to take advantage of the status scaling. Nourish is still a viable choice despite the nerfs. The energy multiplier and viral damage nerf aren't the greatest, but they're still a bright side. The lowered viral damage allows for slash status weapons to retain their very high slash weighting. This means that it will produce more slash than viral procs for better damage over time. Finally, we have Roar, which is mainly here for the faction damage calculation that it provides. Roar will affect all of the slash status effects that Dante dishes out, and is calculated for the Tragedy nuke. Even though it is nice, modding faction damage isn't hard, and neither is stacking status. Arcane options for Dante are fairly interesting. Out of all the arcanes, I found Arcane Energized, Arcane Velocity, Molt Augmented, and Molt Efficiency to be the most effective. Arcane Energized is used for regulating energy reserves. However, I do find it unnecessary since the build reduces energy costs a lot. If you need it, go for it. Velocity is used to buff Noctua. The bonus 120% fire rate will increase energy expenditure, but also increases DPS and slash proc application. Since the alt fire will regenerate energy quickly, the energy loss will be negligible. In my opinion, Molt Augmented is a mandatory arcane. Having an ability strength buff affects all of the abilities in Dante's kit, drastically increasing his potential damage output. Lastly, there's Molt Efficiency, which grants ability duration. I feel like Dante's abilities last plenty long already, but this is a suitable arcane if you don't like the other two options. I run a combination of Arcane Velocity and Molt Augmented. This allows me to DPS effectively with Noctua and buff the rest of my abilities. Having a high fire rate may seem annoying at first, but it just takes some careful energy management to make it work well. Molt Augmented makes Tragedy hit harder and multiplies the damage that targets take by about 10 times. Focus schools are up next. The only two I would consider using for endgame content for Dante are Madurai and Zenurik. Madurai offers great bonuses for caster frames. For example, there's Power Transfer, which increases the casting speed of abilities by 50% upon switching to Warframe. This is perfect for Dante since his animations, while pretty, are slow to cast. This casting speed is a very welcome bonus. Sling Strength grants 40% ability strength, which is perfect for buffing all abilities and increasing the damage of Noctua. Finally, there's Phoenix Talents, which does affect the direct damage done by Noctua. Void Strike is nice for bursting down priority targets, but is mainly used in level cap Void Cascade. Regardless, it's still a nice ability to have for acolytes and bosses. If you're having a ton of trouble with energy, Zenurik is your only other option. Wellspring makes Noctua a book machine gun, and Hardened Wellspring grants us and our allies 20% ability strength. Temporal Drag and Temporal Shot offer decent crowd control and damage respectively. The headshot bonus from Temporal Shot does benefit Noctua for much better scaling. At the end of the day, the choice is up to you. Since I run a lot of Void Cascade missions, I usually run with Madurai. However, having Zenurik as a backup is nice to have. As for Archon shards, there are only two types that you need to worry about. The first is Amber Shards, which can be used to increase ability casting speed. This is essential for Dante since his ability rotations can be quite lengthy. The other options are Crimson Archon Shards, which can be used for ability strength or ability duration. Ability strength offers better damage potential, whereas ability duration offers better quality of life. As you are seeing on screen, I use 2 Tauforge Amber Shards for casting speed and 3 Tauforge Crimson Shards for ability strength. This is completely overkill, but it's a good example of what you should be aiming for. Of course, if you plan to use corrosive damage to armor strip, you may want to use at least 2 Emerald Archon Shards. Last but not least, we have our trusted companions. There are 2 options for today, Diriga and a Panzer Vulklok. The Diriga build can be used in conjunction with Archon Stretch for mindless energy regeneration. Remember that the ability hierarchy for Sentinels and Companions follows mod order, from left to right, top to bottom. Placement of the ability preset mods needs to be correct to take advantage of their effects more often. Tenacious Bond reduces companion recovery time on headshot kills, and it also grants a final 1.2 times critical multiplier if our companion possesses a crit chance above 50%. Seismic Bond is primarily used for the stacking 3% ability efficiency that gets activated on companion damage while a channeled ability is active. This buff can stack up to 10 times for a total of 30%. This bonus is additive with Streamline for a total of 60%. Seismic Bond works with Noctua held out. With the full 60% ability efficiency, each Noctua shot costs 0.8 energy. It also brings Light Verse's cost down to 10.75 energy, and Dark Verse down to 10 energy per cast. Final Verse is only 20 energy to cast. Manifold Bond allows for the status proc to activate Archon Stretch. Vulklok is modded to have viral and electric damage for priming. The rest of the mod slots are used as set bonus steroids. If you don't have Diriga, then a Panzer will suit you just fine. Keep in mind that this Panzer build on screen will not be able to take advantage of Archon Stretch, but will allow for viral priming. That is the build, everyone. Put simply, Dante is an amazing Warframe. I want to put him in S tier for the sheer amount of things he can do well. However, since he is fairly new and still needs time to get used to, I will put him in very high A tier. As time goes on and other tech is found, I'm fairly sure he will become meta. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any thoughts, please leave them in the comments. As always, thank you all for watching, and happy farming.